The Haunting of Glendalough, Ireland's Valley of Eternal Shadows. A horror story inspired by the documented history, folklore, and ghost legends surrounding Glendalough, County Wicklow, Ireland. While the historical setting and many legends are real, dialogue and narrative details are fictionalized for storytelling. The Silent Valley. Deep within the Wicklow Mountains lies Glendalough, meaning, the Valley of the Two Lakes. Today it is one of Ireland's most beautiful historical sites, welcoming thousands of visitors each year who come to admire its ancient monastery, stone churches, towering round tower, and peaceful lakes. But as daylight fades and the last tourists leave, locals claim the valley transforms into something far older than history itself. They say the silence that settles over Glendalough is not empty, it listens. For more than 15 centuries, travelers have reported strange whispers, ghostly monks wandering through the mist, mysterious lights among the ruins, and an overwhelming feeling that unseen eyes follow anyone who lingers after sunset. St. Kevin's Sacred Valley. The story of Glendalough began in the 6th century when St. Kevin, seeking solitude, built a small monastery deep within the wilderness. Historical records describe him as a hermit who lived among wild animals, spending years in prayer inside caves overlooking the upper lake. His monastery eventually became one of Ireland's greatest religious centers, attracting monks, scholars, and pilgrims from across Europe. Yet this peaceful sanctuary repeatedly became the target of Viking raids and later Norman invasions. Countless monks were killed defending the monastery, their blood staining the sacred ground. Although the buildings were rebuilt many times, many believe the spirits of those who died protecting the valley never truly departed. The Curse of the Round Tower. Standing nearly 1,000 years old, Glendalough's Round Tower remains one of Ireland's finest medieval structures. Built as both a bell tower and refuge during attacks, monks climbed inside whenever raiders approached. According to local legend, not everyone escaped. During one particularly brutal Viking assault, several monks became trapped inside as flames consumed the wooden entrance below. Rather than surrender, they chose to remain in prayer until smoke filled the tower. Visitors today often report hearing faint church bells echoing through the valley despite there being no functioning bells anywhere nearby. Others claim that if you stand beneath the tower after midnight, distant chanting slowly grows louder until it seems to surround you from every direction. The monks who never left. Park rangers and local residents have shared stories for generations about mysterious hooded figures walking silently between the monastery ruins. Witnesses describe them wearing dark robes with faces hidden beneath deep hoods. They never speak. They never acknowledge anyone watching. They simply walk through ancient doorways before vanishing into solid stone walls. Some visitors have chased these figures believing them to be reenactors or late-night photographers, only to find the ruins completely empty seconds later. Paranormal investigators believe these apparitions may be residual hauntings, echoes of monks continuing the routines they followed centuries ago. The Ghost of St. Kevin's Cell. Near the ancient churches sits the small stone structure known as St. Kevin's Cell. Historians believe it was once a tiny chapel or storage building, but folklore claims Kevin himself often prayed there alone. Several visitors have described hearing quiet breathing from inside the empty building. Others report footsteps circling the structure while no one is nearby. One photographer visiting before sunrise claimed his camera repeatedly focused on a shadow standing inside the doorway. Yet every time he looked up, nothing stood there. When he later reviewed the photographs, one image appeared to show the outline of a thin hooded figure staring directly toward the camera before dissolving into darkness. The Upper Lake. The Upper Lake is breathtaking during daylight, surrounded by steep cliffs and ancient forests. Yet locals rarely remain there after sunset. According to old Wicklow folklore, strange lights sometimes drift low across the water before disappearing beneath the surface. Fishermen once believed these glowing shapes were the souls of monks who drowned while attempting to escape invaders. Modern hikers have reported hearing splashes despite perfectly still water, followed by whispers carried across the lake by winds that suddenly fall silent. Some say if you answer those whispers, you may hear your own name called back from somewhere beneath the water. The Cave of the Hermit. High above the upper lake sits St. Kevin's Bed, a narrow cave carved into the cliffside where the saint is believed to have lived. Reaching it requires climbing dangerous paths overlooking the valley. Climbers have reported feeling an invisible presence following them during the ascent. Several claim they heard footsteps directly behind them only to turn around and find nobody there. Others describe sudden drops in temperature inside the cave, even during warm summer afternoons. Some paranormal researchers suggest that the cave retains an unusual atmosphere due to centuries of prayer, while local folklore insists Kevin's spirit still guards the valley from anyone with evil intentions. The Pilgrim's Warning. For centuries, pilgrims walked the winding roads to Glendalough seeking healing and forgiveness. An old local saying warned travelers never to remain inside the monastery grounds after the final evening light disappeared. It was believed that the boundary between the living and the dead became dangerously thin during the hours of darkness. Stories tell of pilgrims who ignored the warning and became hopelessly lost despite walking familiar paths. Some emerged the next morning convinced only minutes had passed, while others insisted they had heard monks singing somewhere deep within the ruins throughout the entire night. The photographer's encounter. In 2014, according to stories often repeated among local guides, an amateur photographer stayed behind hoping to capture long-exposure images of the round tower beneath the stars. Around midnight, he noticed several human figures standing near the old cathedral. Assuming other photographers had arrived, he continued setting up his equipment. When he looked again, the figures had moved closer without making a sound. Their robes appeared medieval, and none carried flashlights. Feeling uneasy, he called out a greeting. None responded. As he raised his camera, the figures slowly faded into the surrounding mist. He packed his equipment and left immediately. Later, one photograph revealed faint silhouettes standing exactly where he had seen them, although no one else had been present that night. Voices among the gravestones. Glendalough's ancient cemetery contains graves stretching back hundreds of years. Visitors occasionally report hearing quiet conversations carried on the wind even when the graveyard is completely deserted. Others describe children laughing somewhere beyond the headstones despite there being no families nearby. Electronic voice recording sessions conducted by paranormal investigators have captured unexplained sounds that some interpret as whispered prayers in Latin. Skeptics argue these are simply natural echoes, but believers insist the cemetery remains one of Ireland's most spiritually active places. The shadow beside the cross. Near St. Kevin's Cross stands one of Glendalough's oldest stone monuments. One autumn evening, two hikers reportedly noticed a tall black figure standing beside the cross just after sunset. Believing someone needed assistance, they approached. The figure remained perfectly still until they came within several meters. Then, without moving its feet, it appeared to dissolve into the evening fog. The hikers searched the surrounding area for nearly 20 minutes without finding another person. One later admitted that throughout the encounter he felt overwhelming sadness unlike anything he had experienced before. The ranger's experience. A retired park ranger later recounted an incident from his years working in Glendalough. During a routine patrol after closing time, he repeatedly heard church bells ringing somewhere within the valley. Assuming another ranger was conducting maintenance, he followed the sound toward the round tower. As he approached, the bells abruptly stopped. He found the grounds completely empty. While returning to his vehicle, he heard slow chanting echo from the cathedral ruins behind him. When he turned around, dozens of small lights appeared between the gravestones before vanishing all at once. The ranger never worked night shifts alone again. The valley that watches. Many paranormal investigators believe Glendalough is haunted not because of one tragic event but because of centuries of devotion, violence, pilgrimage, and death layered upon the same sacred ground. Thousands of monks prayed there. Hundreds died there. Generations were buried there. Whether these stories arise from imagination, natural acoustics, or something beyond explanation remains unknown. Yet visitors from around the world continue reporting similar experiences despite never hearing the legends beforehand. The final warning. If you ever visit Glendalough, stay until sunset if you wish to witness its breathtaking beauty. Watch the golden light fade across the ancient tower, listen to the wind moving through the old cemetery, and admire the peaceful waters of the upper lake. But if darkness begins to cover the valley and distant bells seem to echo where none should exist, remember the warning passed down through generations of Wicklow locals. Do not follow the chanting. Do not answer the whispers. And if a hooded monk silently walks between the ruined churches without leaving footprints, pretend you never saw him. Because in Glendalough, some believe the monastery never truly closed. Its last monks are still keeping watch.